Fat. We know it when we see it. Fat can be highly visible in what we eat, but when it comes to many foods, we avoid it and go for no fat or 1% options, unless we're babies, of course, in which case we choose the full 4.5% organic version. Fats are sometimes solid, sometimes a flowing golden oil. Sometimes we keep them cool, but then prefer to eat them melting on toast. The question we're asking is eating fat what's making us fat? Everybody seems to be putting on weight. Children are plumper, men have expanding waistlines, and as for women, well, we know it all goes on the hips. Obesity is a modern-day epidemic, or so the papers tell us. In fact, USA Today recently went so far as to say the whole world has a weight problem. And as for the health experts, what do they have to say? Well, Britain's Health Service says go for lower fat milk and dairy, as do the recently published US dietary guidelines, which take us right through to 2020. So what about the diet experts? Weight Watchers are the biggest, and they say eat low-fat dairy, choose lean meat without fat, and get half your calories from bread and pasta. That's according to Oprah, who's now a co-owner of the franchise. But in spite of these low-fat guidelines, we are still putting on weight. Could it be that we're simply eating too much? Well, we are eating more, and US national statistics show that compared to 40 years ago, Americans eat 72 additional grams per day, and in Europe we're not far behind. Seems we're all eating more carbs, a rise of 30%, mostly in refined starches and sugars. In fact, compared to 1971, that's the equivalent of one large jam donut every day, which adds up. One thing is clear, the low-fat regime is not making us any slimmer or any healthier either. And if the fat we eat is not making us fat, then what is? Well, let's turn things on their heads. Yes, that's you, Oprah. Now, the question is revised as how do you go about putting on weight deliberately? Well, that's the dilemma Robert De Niro faced playing the boxer Jake LaMotta in his famous film Raging Bull, when he also had to play the older version of himself on the right and add 27 kilos. Now, luckily, Mr. De Niro's a bit of a gourmet, so he travelled Europe for 2 months eating lots of pasta, pancakes, ice cream and beer, all of which are rich in starch and sugar, also known as refined carbs. Did you know that carbs are also used to fatten up animals? Corn, wheat and oats for plumper cattle, pigs, ducks or chickens. So perhaps today's better question is, are we eating too many carbs? There was a time when we were encouraged to eat some food from each food group, if our budgets allowed. But then towards the end of the 20th century, new guidelines arrived with the advice to eat more bread, cereal, rice and pasta, as well as cutting back on fats, oils and sweets. And this was supposed to make us both healthier and slimmer, or so we were told. So did we follow these guidelines? Well, yes, indeed we did. We began to eat more starchy carbs, and although the visual guides changed, the results were the same. In the USA and Europe, we are eating a lot more carb-rich junk food today. What about reducing fats in our diet? Again, the answer is yes. At most supermarket counters, low-fat and light foods dominate. Now, should I buy 80% fat reduced, light, extra light, or lightest? Well, how about sugar? Do we consume less? No! The hidden sugar content of our foods has increased. We've been so focused on fat that we've missed the large amounts of sugar now added to prepared foods. So the results of these probably well-meant low-fat food guidelines are: we eat a lot more refined carbohydrates, some as breakfast or lunchtime staples, and some that have simply now become everyday treats. Then there are hidden carbs. You may think fish fingers are mostly fish, but batter and breadcrumbs make up nearly half the content. Crispy chicken isn't much better, and as for this low-fat yogurt, 83% of the nutrients are in the form of sugary carbs. The simple truth is, too many carbs are making us fat and ill. And we start mass-feeding carbs to our children when they're really quite young. The main problem is that carbs spike your blood sugar levels much quicker and more intensively than protein and fats. So the question should not be, is fat making us fat? Because it doesn't, just as eating broccoli does not make you green. But high-carbohydrate diets do make us fat. By raising blood sugar, your pancreas has to produce more and more insulin, and too much insulin leads to fat storage around your internal organs and on your body. High-carb diets can also make us ill. Over time, your body becomes insulin insensitive, your risk of diabetes increases dramatically, and your hormonal balance is disturbed. And this hormonal balance is why you may not even realize it when you're full. So you keep on eating and snacking, and that's a sure sign that your body is right royally confused. I mean, you probably still think of carbs as being pretty harmless, aren't they? Yet you put cream in your coffee and then it's suddenly a guilty treat. The fact is, we've been brainwashed, and it will take time to rediscover what earlier generations knew, that fat is our friend. There is some good news. The UK's favourite TV doctor, Michael Mosley, has changed his mind on fat, saying, "It is time to apologise for all that useless advice I've been dishing out about fat." And Dr. Ludwig now advocates a low-carb diet, and he's brought out a book to prove it. It is time to rebalance our bodies, to add back more fat in our food. Fat also helps us better absorb vitamins. It's good for our skin, hair and bones, and helps with all cell regeneration. But the chances are you currently eat an unbalanced, high-carb diet, anchored at around 20% protein, with 25% fat and a massive 55% or so carbohydrate. Dietary protein is an essential building block for your body, as is fat, but carbs represent pretty empty calories. You can live without them. That's why a healthy approach would be to make sure you maintain the protein, cut back on the carbs, and add healthy fats back into your diet. If you want to combat weight loss and put the brakes on diabetes, then dial up the protein, cut back further on the carbs, and feature more healthy fats in your diet. Your rebalanced diet will have more protein, a lot more fat, and far fewer starchy, sugary carbs. Most low-carbers, as they call themselves, choose to make bread, pasta, and donuts things of the past. And as a result, you can be healthier and slimmer with more energy. And healthier people have more fun. You'll still be getting some carbs and fibre in berries and all sorts of non-starchy vegetables, and, of course, in delicious combinations of meat, fish, and vegetables. Your two most important rules, though, are stay out of the junk food deluge, which is raining down on all of us, and second, just eat real food. It's as simple as that. So if you want to know more about a low-carb, high-fat, LCHF lifestyle, visit the Fat is Our Friend website, which has lots of information, recipes, and useful links. Follow us on Twitter or type in the hashtag LCHF for general up-to-date information.